Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Just like the sunrise, we gonna let it rain. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Just like the sunrise, we gonna let it rain.
Hello and welcome to In Other News, the unpredictable news show where we talk about the things that the mainstream media won't. Today we're talking about something you've probably already heard. It's been breaking news on many of the national media stages, but we never really get the real situation from the networks, shall we say. We'll get analysis, we'll get people's input, but no one ever actually looks at the thing itself. And in this case, the thing itself says everything. So for today, I thought we would have a look at something exciting, legal documents. But actually, it kind of is. So this is the actual document from the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, which has just ruled to allow the Trump administration to go ahead with their passport shenanigans. What could possibly go wrong? But what I'm really interested in is not only the situation, the facts of the case, but Justice Jackson's dissent, because it really, it's scathing. And so let's get into it. So this is a ruling from today on an application for a stay. So what happened was, you know what? It just says, we'll just read the thing. We'll just read the thing. It'll be fine. This case concerns an executive branch policy requiring all new passports to display an individual's biological sex at birth. The United States District Court for the District of Massachusetts preliminarily enjoined the government from enforcing this policy, and the First Circuit declined to stay the injunction pending appeal. the government filed this stay application. Applying our familiar stay factors at this preliminary stage, we grant this application. Displaying passport holders' sex at birth no more offends equal protection principles than displaying their country of birth. In both cases, the government is merely attesting to a historical fact without subjecting anyone to differential treatment, which is patently not true. We will get into why, but the TLDR for this moment, the reason there's sex on passports at all is ostensibly for identification purposes. They haven't always been there. They were added round about the 1970s for identification purposes. So knowing how tall you were when you were a baby, not useful for identification purposes. We need to know how tall you are today. Knowing what you were assigned when you were a baby, not useful for identification purposes. We need to know what flavor of human you are today. So, yeah. On this record, respondents have failed to establish that the government's choice to display biological sex, quote, lacks any purpose other than a bare desire to harm a politically unpopular group. It should be noted, the government has not failed to refute that either. It's because it's nothing but animus, but never mind. Nor are respondents likely to prevail in arguing that the State Department acted arbitrarily and capriciously by declining to depart from presidential rules that Congress expressly required it to follow. This leads into a whole tangle of weeds, but no. For these reasons, the government is likely to succeed on the merits. So the case is not actually settled, right? This is because of an injunction. And then another court put a stay, or they're putting a stay on the injunction. The case is still proceeding forward. But while the case is going forward, the court's ordered that Trump cannot radically change passport policy because it hurts people. And now the Supreme Court is stepping in and saying, actually, we should let them do this probably illegal thing that isn't actually settled yet, because why not? Amazing. Good government. In light of the foregoing, the government will suffer a form of irreparable injury absent a stay. Now, that's another issue because the government has not demonstrated, the administration has not demonstrated there will be harm to the government from having to not radically change the rules for passports. One would imagine it would continue to operate the same way it has for the past 30 fucking years. But never mind that. The application for stay presented to Justice Jackson and by her referred to the court is granted. The June 17th, 2025 order of the United States District Court for the District of Massachusetts, case number 1:25CV10313. We love how things are named around here, is stayed pending the disposition of the appeal in the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit and disposition of a petition for a writ of certiorari, if such a writ is timely sought. That's legalese basically saying the government can go ahead while the case proceeds unless some other paperwork gets in the way. Amazing. In the event certiorari is granted, the stay shall terminate upon the sending down of the judgment of this court. Justice Jackson, with whom Justice Sotomayor and Justice Kagan join, dissent from the grant of application for stay. And this is what Justice Jackson has to say, and this is amazing. As is becoming routine, the government seeks an emergency stay of a district court's preliminary injunction pending appeal. As is also becoming routine, this court misunderstands the assignment. Our task in deciding stay applications is not simply to make a back-of-the-napkin assessment of which party has a better legal argument, citation. Rather, the actual nub of the project, if we choose to involve ourselves in the matter at all, is to fairly determine whether the applicant's showing justifies our extraordinary intervention. And that is an important thing to note. The Supreme Court does not just jump on every possible splitting of hairs in legal discourse. The Supreme Court's intervention is extraordinary. It's supposed to only get involved in serious cases that have a serious impact on a serious number of people. And even this case, I would argue, while it does affect the entire transgender population of the United States, doesn't do so in a serious way. It's one identity document. It's damaging. It's harmful. It could potentially endanger people in certain circumstances, but the change in and of itself does not rise to the level of SCOTUS intervention. Granted, I'm not a lawyer. C'est la vie. To do this, we consider not only the applicant's likelihood of success on the merits, but also whether the applicant will suffer irreparable harm absent emergency intervention, as well as the relative harm to the parties and the public interest in the grant or denial of a stay. Citation. Here, the balance of the equities factor requiring weighing the harm to the government from not being able to proceed immediately with its allegedly unlawful policy against the harm to the individuals who would be subjected to that policy. Citation. Balancing the equities is an important part of the analysis because it avoids unnecessary real-world injury to people with colorable legal claims. That is to say, people will be hurt by this if we allow it, and the government isn't injured in any way, shape, or form if it isn't allowed until the courts decide for sure. So why are we doing this? The court ignores these critical limits on its equitable discretion today. The government seeks to enforce a questionably legal new policy immediately, but it offers no evidence that it will suffer any harm if it is temporarily enjoined from doing so, while the plaintiffs will be subject to imminent concrete injury if the policy goes into effect. The court nonetheless fails to spill any ink concerning the plaintiffs, opting instead to intervene in the government's favor without equitable justification and in a manner that permits harm to be inflicted on the most vulnerable party. Such senseless sidestepping of the obvious equitable outcome has become an unfortunate pattern. Citation. So too has my own refusal to look the other way when the basic principles are selectively discarded. This court has once again paved the way for the immediate infliction of injury without adequate, or really any, justification. Because I cannot acquiesce to this pointless but painful perversion of our equitable discretion, I respectfully dissent. Justice Jackson nailing it. For 33 years, across 6 presidential administrations, transgender Americans have been able to obtain U.S. passports with sex markers that match their gender identity. From 1992 to 2010, passport applicants who wished to obtain passports with sex markers that were different from the sex assigned to them at birth had to submit evidence of surgical reassignment. In 2010, the State Department began allowing passport applicants to submit a doctor's certification avowing that they had undergone clinical treatment for gender transition. Beginning in 2021, the State Department allowed applicants to self-select the sex marker that matched their gender identity. At no point has anyone been harmed by this, nor has it interfered with the government's ability to do anything. Quite the opposite, in that by having a sex marker that matches the person being described, they're able to match the document to the person being described. Go figure. Through it all, the indisputable point of a passport remained to, quote, attest to the identity and nationality of the bearer. Citation. The State Department's sex marker policies have thus long demonstrated that what is important for identification purposes is the bearer's gender identity today. No matter. On January 22nd, 2025, the agency overhauled the rules for sex markers on passports, reverting to its pre-1992 practices. Its passport policy now requires that all new passports reflect the holder's sex assigned at birth. Why? Because 2 days earlier, on January 20th, President Trump issued Executive Order number 14168, characterizing transgender identity as false and corrosive to American society. The order asserted that the policy of the United States is to recognize two sexes, male and female, which it defined based on the sex assigned at conception. Citation needed. I'm sorry, folks. That always gets me because you don't have a sex at oh my goodness. Everyone is female, apparently, or non-binary, depending on how you read that order. And the order directed the Secretary of State to require that any new government-issued identification documents reflect the holder's biological sex. The State Department responded by rescinding its prior sex identification policies moving forward. Transgender Americans who had previously obtained passports with sex markers reflecting their accurate gender rather than their sex assigned at birth could continue to use those documents until they expire. Several transgender Americans who want or need to obtain new passports filed a putative class action in the District of Massachusetts, challenging the State Department's decision to upend 33 years of settled practice. They claimed that the passport policy violated the Equal Protection Clause twice. It unlawfully discriminated on the basis of sex, which is true, and it lacked any rational basis because it was motivated by bare animus against transgender Americans, which is also true, as evidenced in the language of the executive order. But never mind. In addition, they claimed that the passport policy violated the Administrative Procedure Act insofar as it was arbitrary and capricious and was enacted without observance of the procedures that another statute, the Paperwork Reduction Act, requires. The district court thoroughly examined the facts and evidence, considered the applicable law, and issued a 56-page decision. It also issued an order preliminarily enjoining the government from enforcing the passport policy against the plaintiffs. The court made a reasoned determination that the plaintiffs were likely to succeed on their legal claims, that they would suffer concrete and irreparable injuries without an injunction, and that, by contrast, the government would experience no harm from an injunction temporarily preventing it from enforcing the new policy. The government appealed this order, and its appeal remains pending before the First Circuit. 2 months later, the district court granted the plaintiff's motion for class certification and extended the preliminary injunction to a subset of the certified classes. The government unsuccessfully sought a stay of the district court's orders from both the district court and the First Circuit pending the appeal. So, the government has now turned to the Supreme Court for a stay, and for the first time, it has found an obliging audience. Justice Jackson goes on, and it's very interesting. It's very fascinating the way she lays out the facts of the case and the reasoning behind it and why this shit matters, not just for trans people, but the fact that the Supreme Court of the United States is stepping in on behalf of an authoritarian regime to hurt people and for no other reason is wild. If you're interested, feel free to read it. It's available widely on the internet. Just make sure you're finding the Supreme Court decision. It's 25A 319 Trump versus Orr, rather than some random news analysis thing about it. But I did want to take a moment to share with you all Justice Jackson's dissent, the start of it, because it shows not just what the case is, but why the case matters, why the Supreme Court taking this extreme step for no reason except spite, apparently, matters. And I hope y'all stay safe. If you do happen to be a trans person watching, remember this only affects new passports. So if you have a passport, it will still work. You will get to keep using it. If you do have to renew your passport, many apologies. You will still be able to get a passport even if it doesn't describe you correctly. And that's really unfortunate. But you will still be able to leave if you have to. Stay safe. There's more that could be said, of course, but I do try to keep these relatively short so they're easy to rewatch and people can get to the information that they may need. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm trying to work out a way to make these more interactive as we go forward, but the point here is to get rapid news out. So we're going to stick with it for the moment. But do subscribe if you want to see more, if you want to see how things evolve as we go forward, and for the other shows I produce on this channel, including a much more low-key morning show, weekdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. I hope you join us. And that's going to do it for this time. Once again, thank you for being here. And as always, remember, you don't have to go out of your way to hurt other people just to suck the big orange dude's dick, because you're better than MAGA. Toodles. Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for October. Miranda, Karen Butcher, Jessica the Transmetal Alchemist, Robin Webster, Maya Adkisson, Jimmy Tux, Ian Chen, Kalasia, Lilith, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Godless Engineer, Jester, Lil of All Trades, Deviant Outcast, and Kelly King, the Detroit Atheist Queen. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember, or by joining Emberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, member-only live streams, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you all so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.
Just like a spark that's breaking